This video is brought to you by Wicket Cricket Manager. Your support is invaluable to us, so smash that subscribe button like a fast bowler back of a length. Or you could leave a comment, something along the lines of, "Wow, Jared, you're one hell of a swinger." Furthermore, help us reach more people by sharing our work on social media, supporting us on Patreon, or sending live super chats. Celebrate your cricket heroes with Bodyline t-shirts. Explore their player-inspired tees, featuring legends like Sachin Tendulkar, Brian Lara, and Viv Richards. They also have team-inspired designs and options for hardcore cricket nerds. Their collection is a must-have for the true cricket enthusiast.
Hello and welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to episode 52 of the Uncovered Podcast. I'm your host, Bahram Kazi. You can find me at Def Mango on Twitter. And with me, of course, is Jared Kimber, who you can find everywhere. And lots to discuss today. Jared, will start with the World Cup late entrants. There have been quite a few. And I suppose the best one to start with would be Ravichandran Ashwin. He's replaced the injured Akshar Patel in India's squad. And even though he's not like for like in terms of the batting depth that Akshar probably provided, even though Ashwin is no mug with the bat. But, he's innovating and has a new grip, is bowling with his third finger, has a new carom ball, and he's clearly pushing for more wickets. So what's your take on this replacement?
Yeah, the whole carom ball thing's quite interesting because if you watch that ball, he doesn't flick it like a carom ball at all. It actually looks like he's trying to bowl a wobble ball, and then that wobble ball swings and then seams away. Anyway, it's interesting that he called it something different. Maybe he didn't want to call it a wobble ball because people would start to look for it or whatever. But, Ashwin, if you're watching and you want to correct me, I'm more than happy. But the footage I saw, I didn't think it was a wobble ball. Anyway, look, you and I have been working on something where we thought they might pick him anyway, right? So there are strengths and weaknesses on both sides. There is a point at which they had to make a decision with Ravi Jadeja, I think, which is, do we trust him to play all the games? I don't think there's any reason not to. I know he's been struggling a little bit with a bat of recent times, but his bowling form's come back. If they trust Ravi Jadeja, then I'm not sure how they fit Akshar Patel and Ravi Jadeja into the 150 overs side, right? So I do think that's an issue. So if you look at it from that perspective, what have they given themselves now? They've given them the option of having Kuldeep, who obviously spins the ball back in, is a proper strike threat. They've then got an option of an all-rounder. And then if Kuldeep's struggling in, the pressure or gets the yips or anything else, you have the most experienced bowler you have to come in, who is now in the middle of experimenting and taking more wickets and gives you a little bit of batting. I just think that is probably a better three-person lineup. I understand the Akshar thing. I'm not sure that they were wrong for not having Akshar in. I think we might have talked about this on Uncovered last week, where once Ashwin started striking, I know it was only one game, but once he started experimenting and trying to strike again, that's kind of all you want from him, right?
True.
The biggest problem with Ashwin at times is he does the complete in Test cricket. He never stops tinkering, right? And in one day T20 cricket, he tinkers quite a bit, not as much as he used to, but there were certainly periods where he tinkered a lot. But you watch him in one day cricket, and perhaps he wasn't doing that as much, and because of that, teams were sitting back and just milking him. If he's experimenting and taking wickets, he's very important. Look, he's not Akshar. I mean, everyone talks about him with the bat. I think people have forgotten that they both have to field as well. Akshar is a fantastic fielder. And to be fair to Ashwin, that's probably not his main strength as a human being. So I think with all that in mind, there are ways when you could say maybe he would even strike better than Akshar would. He can bat in the middle order and lower order in a reduced role. What he doesn't probably have is the flexibility in a one-day game to go up the order, which we've seen him do in T20 cricket. So in some ways, it's a slight downgrade. In some ways, it's a slight upgrade. But I think they're making the call based on talent, right? And so if you're making the call based on talent, even if we disagree with it, I don't think that's the end of the world. I'd be much more concerned if they were making it, based on reputation or anything else. But I think they're like, look, he's just taking wickets. There's fit here, and it works a little bit. So let's give it a go. I know that you worked on something about this as well. At the end, did you think that Akshar come in, or do you think that Akshar should have stayed in?
Well, in the scenario where Akshar was injured, I felt that Ashwin should be the guy who comes in. But if Akshar wasn't injured, I thought that he was still there to fulfill a certain role. But originally, when he was selected, I wanted Chahal, if you remember, right? So I wasn't of the opinion that you should have both Akshar and Jadeja in the same 11, because there's not much that separates them in terms of skill set. It's the same kind of angle as well. But, you spoke about talent. Of course, he brings experience as well. And you also spoke about experimentation. I saw a picture of him bowling wrist spin today, and he's done that before in the IPL. So maybe we can expect something along the lines from Ashwin in the World Cup. But I mean, just the fact that they have these wealth of resources, that even after losing a player, Ashwin is the one who's coming in. And I suppose we can expect a Mankad or two in this World Cup.
And look, if that isn't worth him playing, I don't know what it is. The truth is, it's funny. I had a friend who's part of the off-spinners union, I suppose is fair to say. And he was saying to me, I can't believe he's not in this squad, blah, blah, blah. And I said, yeah, but if he does come in, isn't there a big chance he won't play anyway? I'm not saying he won't play any games, because I think there's a chance he'll play games. But even Akshar, the more I thought about it, I was like, I'm not sure they fit Akshar into this side anymore. If you could go in, and they've tried this in previous World Cup, although neither of them were in as good a form. But if you have Chahal and Kuldeep in prime wicket-taking form, right? I think at that point you could say that you're attacking with your spinners. But I think India want to attack with their seam bowlers as well. They've got Bumrah. Siraj has been bowling great. Shami's got one of the best strike rates in ODI cricket history. They actually have so many options there that they probably don't need a defensive spinner. Sorry, I should say it probably doesn't matter as much if they have a defensive spinner on that side, right? They can bring back the other seamers. Hardik can bowl attacking spells in the middle as well. I think it just gives them a lot of flexibility. So it's more likely they play two spinners. Obviously, Jadeja is going to be one of those. I have called it. I know I did the rankings today. If you haven't seen it, it's on the main channel. I did the rankings of the spinners today. I have Kuldeep as the number one spinner in this World Cup. I put him in tier 1, but I would have him above everyone else. My only concern is, hasn't played as much cricket as some of the other guys, everything else. But I think right at the spinner most likely to take wickets at this World Cup.
Yeah, I mean, we'll see how that goes. And Ali SD in the comments has asked if we, see India playing Ashwin, Jadeja and Kuldeep together on any surface. I don't see it happen. I'm not sure. Maybe, on a raging Turner, they might go that direction, but I honestly don't see that. And we have Prateek Jha and Raj Rohit also saying hi from the comments. Hello to you back. And
who was it? Who sent the comment? The first one?
Ali SD.
So I get... Yes, I know why you're saying they won't do it. And I could certainly agree with that, I think, in many ways. What I would say is that because Ashwin boosts their batting just that little bit, and they're probably going to play on one surface where if Hardik can get through 5 overs, right, consistently, you've got 2 other seamers, then you've got 25 overs, guaranteed seam, and then you can pick your 3 spinners. They could do that. This is what I've been saying about India for a long time. Indian fans have become incredibly... I miss the old days. 2003 World Cup, right? I walked to the ground for the final as an Australian fan, and every Indian fan stopped to tell me that India was going to win. And I was like, have you been watching cricket? This Australian team's really good. I don't understand, right? Somehow, the Indian mindset has flipped. And now all I'm hearing people go, I don't know about Jadeja at 7. Where are the other great number 7s in world cricket? What the hell are you talking about? Well, you're saying he's not as good as Marco Janssen suddenly, right? Like, what are we talking about? And it's really, really flipped. I look at this squad with Akshar in it or with Ashwin in it, right? Even Shardul, who I'm not as big a fan of as everyone else is. And I look at it and go, the flexibility here is incredible. What they can do from any situation. So you're right. I actually think they could go as far if they wanted to, is picking an extra batter and having Hardik and Jadeja at, let's say, 5 and 6 in that lineup. Specialist number 7 batter, and then and actually get 15 to 17 overs through, or even 20 overs if they wanted to, through Hardik and Jadeja and change the lineup that way, right? There's so much flexibility that they could do with this lineup. They could bat to like number, let's say 9, right? Maybe further back if they want to chuck the Lord in there. So they can really bat a very deep amount, and they can incredibly attack, right? They can pick all 3 spinners. They can bring Shardul in and completely muck with it around. There's so much flexibility in this squad, and I don't see that many weaknesses in this squad. I actually think that if you I think England might still be a better ODI side, but England just don't have any death bowlers. Right?
True.
We don't know if England are going to take any wickets through the middle overs either, right? So you look at India and you're like, well, they could take wickets in phases. and their batting should be fine in all three phases, and they can do flexible lineups in any time. So I find it very, very confusing at the moment that people are so down on them.
Yeah, I feel like, and Raj Rohit in the comments has also pointed this out, that the insecurity of the average Indian fan stems from all of that knockout PTSD in the last decade. I think that's where that's coming from. And maybe it's not as big of an issue otherwise. But someone whose mindset is also flipped is Ashwin, clearly, because if you look at his ODI numbers, they aren't particularly stellar. He's a bit defensive, right, throughout history. But now he's pushing for those wickets. So that's a very, very welcome sign. But anyway, let's move on. And of course, we cannot have this episode without talking about Manas, the world's best concussion sub. He's once again made his way into Australia's lineup in a major event. First it was the Ashes, now it's the World Cup. He's hit brilliant form ever since Cam Green copped that ball to his helmet. And yeah, I mean, it's just such a remarkable story that now all of a sudden Manas, who we were all saying won't make it to the squad, now finds himself ahead of Ashton Agar, who is now, it's a butterfly effect, because now not Mitchell, but Glenn Maxwell will be Australia's fifth bowling option and frontline spinner, as per George Bailey. Lots to unpack there.
Yeah, I find it interesting that I think the thought process was that they were going to go in with Maxwell as a frontline spinner before Agar. So I thought what they would do is, because Agar can bat and is obviously a brilliant fielder as well. Agar's like the Australian Akshar Patel, right? In some ways, his batting's slightly overrated, but you do know. I mean, I've seen him hit a six off the last ball of a T20 game to win a match. Mind you, that was against Aaron Finch, but that's a long story. He can bat, and I've always thought he's quite overrated in many different ways. But he's a good defensive spinner. He doesn't go for a lot of runs. He just doesn't take any wickets, which is part of his problem. Can bat, can field, all these different things. So I was thinking that this was the World Cup. They'd be like, well, if we match him with Zampa. And we know Zampa's going to go for a few more runs in the middle, but Zampa can spin it. And then we've got the option in any particular game of Mitch Marsh, Stoinis, Maxwell as a, something's going on, Stoinis, we need you to bowl 2 overs of bounces, right? Shreyas Iyer is in. We don't want to bring our quicks back. We want you to bounce him for a couple of overs, right? Mitch Marsh, we want you, this is a good pitch to bowl back of a length, maybe some Yorkers if you can get some up there. And then in the spinner's case, if the ball is ragging, Maxwell has a really good record with the ball, but it's important to note that he's never really done that as a frontline bowler. So it's slightly friendly, his record. But the point is,
you'd probably want him to be in that Moeen Ali role, though, right? With respect to the ball, that we only use him if we need him. But if Maxwell is told that, okay, he has to bowl a certain amount of overs every game, couldn't that prove to be counterproductive?
Yeah. I mean, they've taken that risk before, right? They took that risk in their T20 in UAE. When they had Maxwell as their spinner and Stoinis bowled their overs. I can't remember if Mitch bowled much in that. They've also got Cameron Green if he's in the side, and Travis Head. There's a lot of different junk bowling, right? I mean, Maxwell is better than a junk bowler, and Mitch Marsh, although he's not a great ODI bowler, is probably slightly better than a junk bowler. Maybe not in India. The rest of that is junk bowling, right? Different levels of junk bowling, and sometimes junk bowling in certain situations can be really, really handy. But that's kind of what it is. If you're making him your fifth bowler, I think you are then putting a lot of pressure on Stoinis and Marsh to back him up as well. But because they won that T20 World Cup doing this, I think they think that is their best option. And as I said, I thought Agar was going to be in the 11. I thought that's where they were angling for all this, discussions with people inside the camp. I was wrong. He wasn't going to be in the 11. So it's not as big a deal with him not being there. But, I mean, Maxwell's not an inclusion, but I don't think we really knew for sure he was going to be the fifth bowler until very, very recently. And so I think that's a very, very big change from Australia. And, it's no different than what South Africa are doing with Marco Jansen at number 7, or maybe Santner batting at number 7 for New Zealand, right? All these things are very similar. You have to, if you don't have, I don't know, even Shakib Al Hassan or Jason Holder, right? Or you don't have multiple all-round options like, Bangladesh and England and India, then you have to take a chance on one side of the ball or the other. And Australia are deciding that Glenn Maxwell can do the job well enough. But you're right. I think on the pitches that most pitchers bat, but the pitches that are batting friendly, I think that's where Maxwell will struggle. I don't think he'll struggle on the ones where there's a little bit something. I think he's a very clever part-time bowler, but he's a part-time bowler. And
True.
as some look, I worked with Maxwell and Stoinis when I was at the Melbourne Stars, right? There was no team meeting where I ever said we should go in with them as our fifth bowler, right? That didn't mean that I didn't think they should be used, and I thought they were really good times. And we ended up combining between the two of them to bowl, 2 overs each to get through those sorts of things. The problem with that is that Stoinis is a very good bouncer bowler. That particular skill that he has is not as important in India, and Mitch Marsh maybe not as much thought of as a one-day bowler. Cameron Green, if he's in the side, and I don't know if you fit him into this side anymore.
I don't know where you would fit him in this side, because if you're opening with Marsh and Warner when Head isn't available, and one down and two down would be what, Smith and Marnus now, or would you rest one of those and just have one number 3? That's another conundrum, right?
Yeah, I think that's a very good point as well. So I don't know how the final side sort of works out. If you have Green and Maxwell as your fifth bowler, I think that's a lot more of a comfortable situation to be in. I don't think Green's going to be in that starting lineup, though, the way he's been playing. Not just the way he's been playing, but the way that the lineup is sort of unfurling itself. But no, it's good fun. I think it's one of the good things about one-day cricket is whoever was the mad bastard who decided that we should have a max or minimum of 5 bowlers. It's such a random number. It could have been 6, it could have been 4, right? There are other ways that we could have done it mathematically, especially as, originally it was 60 overs, right? There were so many different things you could do. And I still think if one day cricket does survive, that will be the thing that will disappear. It's great for T20 cricket, but I'm not sure if, one day cricket, you want to almost differentiate itself. But that ability to have that means if you do have an all-rounder, you're at a huge advantage. And if not, you have to take a lot of punts, and that makes it a lot of fun.
Yeah, definitely. And your comment on one day cricket surviving, well, the recent statement by Mark Nicholas has definitely, made me afraid. New MCC president has said that it's not bringing in the money, so we don't know what the future will hold. But anyway, one last person that I want to talk about in World Cup late entrants, and you might not even be expecting this, and you're not even a fan of this guy, but CS, our colleague, is, and he is Andile Feflequayo, and he's here ahead of Anrich Nokia. South Africa have this issue of their tail starting a bit early. That depends on how well you rate Marco Janssen as a number 7, of course. But do you think that they could perhaps utilize him somewhere, or should they just stick to their guns with 6 batters, 5 frontline bowlers, and go for the kill?
It's not that I'm not a fan of him. I love his name. I think it was. I remember I was commentating on that it must have been the Champions Trophy, and I had to learn his name. And then I got taken off the games that he was playing in, and I was so disappointed because I had spent. I would put him into every single commentary stint. I would mention his name just because I spent so long trying to perfect it. Because it I don't know if Andile is fine, but the Feflequayo bit, that's just not how it even slightly reads. It's a fantastically interesting name. Look, I think there's a combination of a couple of things here. They're maybe not as strong on their death bowling of recent times. And they think that he's okay at the death. I think he's a pretty ordinary death bowler, all things told, but he's not terrible. The thing about the batting is, I don't think we've ever actually seen that much great batting from him. So, he averages under 24 in first class cricket. If he was, put it this way, if he was either scoring at a strike rate of 110 or averaging 28 to 30, he would be in the side all the time, right? Because he has enough utility. But the truth is that he's not quite good enough with the bat, and he's not quite good enough with the ball. Because of the knuckleball, I think that gives him a little bit more skill. But I just think the knuckleball is more of a it's more of a T20 delivery. And by that I mean, Benny Howe, so the king of knuckleballs, right? He's a fine list A bowler, but he's not one of the world's best list A bowlers. Whereas by numbers, he is one of the world's best T20 bowlers. But yeah, I think there are some concerns. I like this though, because at least they're saying to themselves, what happens if we get halfway through this tournament and our number 7 gamble isn't working, right? They're buying themselves some insurance here, which is, if you go back through all my work, the recent times talking about South Africa, that's been the big thing with me is if it doesn't work and you don't have a plan B, I don't know what you do. They've got a plan B now. Now, having said that, Feflequayo, not a particularly strong plan B, but he's got talent. I just don't know if he has it in the exact right ways that are going to help them win a one-day World Cup.
Fair enough. At their prime, who would you have picked? Peak Ryan McLaren, Chris Morris, or Fef Lequeo? I think you're leaning towards Ryan McLaren, aren't you?
I have to look up Ryan McLaren's numbers. I mean, I think out of those guys, Ryan McLaren can bat number 6 in domestic limited overs cricket, whereas I don't think Chris Morris or Fef Lequeo could do that consistently. I don't think Chris Morris is your ideal number 8 in a one-day game. Even in T20, you kind of just want him for the last 15, 20 balls, right? I think his bowling is better. Would give you, so maybe you get a little bit of that. And then if you have, let's say you had Morris at 8 and Marco Janssen at 7 and Maharaj at 9, you've got an Australian style lineup there, don't you? But you're just like, okay, we don't have all-rounders, but we have 3 guys who can hold the bat. And so maybe we hope one of them kicks off every now and again. But yeah, I think I can't remember McLaren as a one-day bowler. I know I watched a lot of him play for Kent, so I should remember it better. I would have thought his bowling is maybe not quite strong enough. So I'd probably go with Morris in that kind of situation. I was a huge fan of Morris. I think a lot of people didn't understand Morris. There was a lot of nonsense said about him. And that when you looked at actually what he did, he was fantastic at it. He still is one of the best death bowlers who's ever played in the IPL. And that's not even a debate, right? He's right up there with he's behind Malinga and Bumrah, but he's on that Dwayne Bravo level. And he never got the credit for that. And then he has the ability to smash the ball at the end. So it's a very good question. I thought, people have forgotten about this. Dwayne Pretorius was going to leave.
True.
Right? He was going to go off and do whatever he was going to do. And, and I know the whole Kolpak thing fell apart, but he might have gone off and become a T20. South Africa pulled him back, right? And said, no, you're a major part of our plans. Is he a major part of their plans? I would argue he's not.
He's a major part of Guyana's plans. They just won the CPL with him. So
exactly.
Look, over there.
and look, again, I mean, if you throw him in as the 4th guy, I'm not sure he's any better than any of the others we've said. The truth is they don't have that player at the moment. And, maybe their best option would be, picking Roloff again. But he doesn't bowl. He doesn't bowl much for the Netherlands, so that may not work either.
Yeah, fair enough. Anyway, I think that's enough for World Cup late entrants. We'll be taking a short break. You're watching Uncovered with Behram and Jared. And yeah, we'll catch you shortly after this ad.
This video is brought to you by Wicket Cricket Manager. Join our new YouTube channel, Jared Kimber Podcast. Engage with live recordings or listen to the thought-provoking chats 4 times a week, exploring shows like Wagon Wheel, Uncovered, Footmarks, and Red Inker. They cover everything from fan questions, weekend stories, articles, videos, what's going on in cricket, and just anything we want to talk about when it comes to the bat and ball game. Want to have live chats with me or just connect with other cricket fans on Discord that also enjoy my content? Or a few AMAs. Maybe you want early podcast episodes or ad-free content or want to receive my emailer. You can get all of this on our Patreon, plus a little bit of behind the scenes stuff as well. Huge thanks to everyone who has supported us on Patreon so far. You are all part of this channel's success.
Hello and welcome back to episode 52 of the Uncovered podcast. I'm Behram. You can find me at Def Mango on Twitter. And with me, of course, is Jared Kimber. And we have some more people in the comments. I know Shoria was there, but we'll come back to an interesting question that he asked.
Well, just to thank everyone for coming in, because this is the first one we've done on the new podcast channel. And there's heaps of people in the room at the moment. The chat's going off. So huge thanks to everyone because, we're moving it away from the bigger channel to this. We're going to grow this. We've got over 1,000 subscribers over here now. You can do super chats here, I think I'm right in saying that, Behram. So people can have a look at that. But huge thanks to everyone for coming across to the new channel.
Yeah, no, we're really, really glad to have you all over here. And of course, you can always send a super chat, help us out as well, and we'll take that question for sure. Pratik is asking if Jared and this guy does the hosting. Has Jared hired him? Yes, he has. Jared has hired me. Anyway,
no, I haven't hired him. He just volunteered. I don't think I've paid him, and I'm not going to. Why would I do that?
Yeah, of course.
This guy. Tell me what you think, this guy.
Yeah, this guy, I mean, I'm just happy to be here, but I don't know, Pratik, if you have some constructive criticism, I'm all ears. Eknath says that this channel does not allow super chats, so that's something to look
Oh,
into later. Yeah, we'll fix that.
we just got to
Um,
1,000 subscribers, so I think we had to go through all the stuff. Hopefully, by the middle of the World Cup, we'll have all that sorted out. But there's a bunch of nonsense that you have to do in the background.
Yeah. Anyway, this guy will take over again, and we'll talk about the Tamim fiasco, one of my favorite stories, I suppose, of recent times. And let me rewind the
I was
clock.
going to say, go back. Let's play the greatest hits.
Yes, absolutely. So Tamim Iqbal was Bangladesh's ODI captain. He had led them to automatic qualification for the World Cup, which was quite big. And then he got into an altercation with the BCB president because he wasn't 100% fit, had some back injury or issues over there. And then, after that altercation, Tamim Iqbal called a press conference and retired with immediate effect. And then within 48 hours, after having a meeting with Mashrafi Murtaza and the Bangladeshi prime minister, he took his retirement back, got a vacation, got some time off that he's going to come back in the New Zealand ODIs. And he came back in that series, played a couple of games. This back problems probably came back in. And then new captain, Shakib Al Hasan, he, made his dissent very, very clear. He said that he does not want an unfit player part of the team. And he also called Tamim selfish, childish, and not a team player. And that, Tamim Iqbal basically could not just selectively play games. And had it been the Kane Williamson injury sort of situation where after certain games he would be fit for the extent of the tournament, Shakib apparently would not have had any problems. But this selective thing was not sitting well with Shakib, and there was clearly more to this story. And then Tamim lost his World Cup spot. So yeah, it's been quite the soap opera, hasn't it, Jared?
Yeah, you've got them. Mashrafi got involved as well, didn't he, on Twitter or Insta?
Yeah,
or wherever?
Mashrafi suggested that Shakib should have texted Tamim. I mean, there's lots going on over here.
Look, Tamim doesn't want to play. I mean, how much clearer does he need to be, right, that he doesn't want to play?
I mean, Tamim came on social media or something and said that he would have been fully fit to play the World Cup. So there's more to this, right? The soap opera is continuing.
But I mean, he already tried to pull out, right? Like he didn't. Do you know what I mean? He tried to move on, and I think he's doing. And I'm not having a go at him when I say he doesn't want to play. What I mean is, it's no longer the most important thing in the world that he plays in these games, and he's got other priorities, and he's upset with the way that cricket's been run. I mean, him and Shakib have had issues for very long time. None of this is new, right? And so I do think from that perspective, they've got themselves to a position where Tamim was just like, I don't need to do any of this anymore. I've got, I want to wash my hands of it. They then pull him back into it, and then this happens. And whether he was fully fit and would have played every game, or whether it's Tamim Iqbal, right? You probably would have gone with him at what? Let's say he said to you he could play 6 out of 10 games. It's like the Andre Russell thing that West Indies went into the last World Cup with, right? What Kane Williamson, again. There are probably games that Kane Williamson will have to be rested from, right? I don't think Kane Williamson should be playing, so I'm already on that side. So you have to do that. But the truth is that this is also murky, and that presidents or prime ministers or whatever
Prime ministers, BCB president and the Bangladeshi prime minister, and Mashrafi Murtaza seems to be a really influential figure in all of this.
he may, I don't know, he may be a governor somewhere. I'm not aware of all their different roles. The point is that it got out of control well before this. And I'm not, Mashrafi's got a point about Shakib should have been contacting Tamim directly. There's no reason for those sorts of things to play. When you've got senior players like this, I actually remember this. Derek Pringle was saying to me, who drops Jimmy Anderson, right? So if England got to the point where they were going to drop Jimmy Anderson, who is the person who makes that call? And England have those sorts of things set up, because you can't have a situation where you've got a new chairman of selectors and they call him up, right? Because this man's had 20-year career, right? He's going to want to hear it from someone he knows, a friend, whatever that may be. And these sorts of things need to be done correctly, and everything else. Clearly nothing here has been done correctly. At this stage, I'm surprised that Bangladesh cricket get to the ground on time, if we're being honest, right? The whole thing seems like a complete joke, the way that it's been run. And I think the big shame of this is that we know that Bangladesh has improved massively over recent times. I think perhaps, the idea that they could win this World Cup or get to the semi-finals is a bit overblown by some people. And maybe if it was being played in a year's time, I'd feel slightly more comfortable with that because everyone's improving so quickly over there. But this is not how they deserve for this to happen. They have perhaps their best all-round team coming into a World Cup. And it's currently, forget the Tigers, forget the baby Toigers. Currently it's like, it's a clown show, right?
Yeah.
And there's no reason for Bangladesh cricket to be this much of a clown show. And there are a lot of people who, even Mashrafi, who I really, really admire, couldn't he have said his message to Shakib personally?
Yeah, that's true.
Right? Do you know what I mean? Everything, I know, as I said, there's so many issues behind the ball. And what happened really, if we're being honest, is a long time ago that when they got rid of all their older players and they made Shakib, Tamim, Mashrafi, and Ashraful, everyone's forgotten about him, but when they made them the stars, they inflated all their egos, and none of them outside of Shakib really performed to the level that deserved any of that sort of attention. They gave this team to a bunch of kids, and what you have now is a bunch of kidults running their cricket, right? And they haven't grown up the way that they should have because they didn't have senior players going, oi, no, we don't do that here. Because they culled all their senior players. This is why senior players are so important. And this is the sort of thing that has happened here, is why even when you have a younger squad coming through, you want a couple of old pros there just to be like, no. And here's why no. And even then, what you want is the argument between the old and the young constantly happening so that you can still even be more progressive. Okay, well, this is the way we're going to do it now, but I'm going to justify this to you, right? And I just think with Bangladesh that too many of those younger players got too much power and too much fame early on, and there was no adult in the room. And they've had 83 coaches. Like, who's been the strongest voice in Bangladesh cricket? You would have to say Mashrafi was, right, for a long period of time, and he wasn't actually captain that much, and he had no knees. He literally had no knees.
Yeah, I mean, it's very, very valid point that you bring up that, every squad needs those senior pros, and it's the senior pros who are having all these issues in this one, and that's just not a good look and does not augur well for Bangladesh cricket. Forget the World Cup, like even going into the future, these aren't really promising signs. And another thing that Shakib mentioned was that, he had some issues with Tamim not vacating his role as captain earlier. He had issues with Tamim taking it or stretching it all the way till the end and then, vacating his post just before the World Cup. And he said that even a player had spoken to Tamim that when are you going to leave or something? And had he left 18 months earlier, Bangladesh would be better prepared. But yeah, I mean, Shakib isn't an easy customer either, is he? I mean, he's had a few issues of his own.
None of them are.
And
I don't think any of those. I mean, Ashraful, we know what happened to him as well, the match fixing and everything. None of them are easy customers. And I remember talking to someone who was coaching Bangladesh, I want to say around 2010, 2012. And he was telling me this then. He said they've created this environment that is not particularly healthy. And it's all about telling these guys they're going to be the next Sachin Tendulkars and, Imran Khans and all this. And he said, I'm not sure they're talented enough to do that. But even so, Imran Khan had seniors around him. Right? Sachin Tendulkar had seniors around him. And he said, these guys are growing up and it's like a junior cricket team. Right? And that has now come into this thing where they haven't developed the way that they should have. What? Oh, he didn't leave the captaincy. What are we talking about? It's nonsense, right? And it's not good enough. And Bangladesh, for them to actually break through to that next level, one of two things have to happen. They have to actually become more professional with their cricket, or they need to suddenly unearth an incredible crop of players like, Pakistan did in the 80s, or, India did in the 90s, or Sri Lanka did in the 90s, right? The problem is that they should be able to do both of those things. And at the moment, unless they find, Shakib, the fast bowling version of Shakib, you think they're going to get mired in the middle of the table, and there's no reason for them to do that. This is a huge sport in that country. They have, the standard of living is growing in Bangladesh all the time. It's the BPL was at one stage one of the better leagues in T20 cricket. There's no reason for them to be in this sort of crappy mire of their own making. Can you have a
Yeah,
crappy
no,
Maya? I
absolutely.
think you can have a crappy Maya. I'm not
You
sure.
could probably have a crappy Maya, yeah. And there was more to the story. I'm sorry, but there was this point where Shakib quoted that MS Dhoni once said that if you're an unfit player in the squad, you're cheating the team. And then he went on to say that Rohit Sharma has scored 10,000 runs, batting at positions 1 to 7, and Tamim is selfish. So was there maybe a school of thought over here where he wanted Tamim to bat lower? Because that's what I could understand from that. Why are you quoting the whole Rohit Sharma thing otherwise?
I've actually said this before. I think for me, Tamim became an opener in Test cricket. I always thought he was maybe better suited to batting 4 or 5 in that sort of position. But having said that, I think that's where Bangladesh kind of had a plethora of options. So would it have helped them? Whereas now, maybe top order is where they have their options, right? Yeah, I mean, I could see that. But the whole selfish thing is like, I mean, Steve Waugh never went up the order, right? There are plenty of very good cricketers who refuse to move because they like the positions that they played in. Or ask for the easier position. I mean, up until 2004, the best batter batted at number 3 automatically, right? And then suddenly out of nowhere, what do we see? Everyone's moving to 4. Why? Well, it's easier. It's like that's how these things work. So yeah, I get what Shakib is saying, and maybe he did want that. Would have been I would have loved, we talk about that I would have loved to have been in that meeting where he tried to get him to do it. But I do think, again, it's something that I think quite a few years ago, maybe when Hathra Singh was around, because he was quite a full-on character, that's when you wanted that to start happening. I don't think if they suddenly moved Tamim in, just before a World Cup, I'm not sure that would have worked. But maybe what Shakib is also saying is, if I'd been running this team for a little while, I would have been able to get him to bat in the middle order, or at least said you're either playing in the middle order or you're not playing. Again, it's just more dirty laundry though, isn't it?
It's lots of dirty laundry. And I mean, someone over here, I think it was Vikas Maikar, he mentioned that in the Bangladesh Celebrity League, there was a big fight and it got
my God, have
cancelled
you
halfway.
seen it?
Yeah, I saw the video and it was just hilarious. Like everyone was just having a go at each other. Men, women, it was just this complete cesspool of, I don't even know what that was. Was there any cricket being played or was it just that? Was it WWE for Bangladesh Celebrity Cricket?
If you haven't seen this footage, it is worth going over and Googling it. It is absolutely bizarre. I mean, I've seen club games do that, but even in a club game, you're kind of playing towards something. And a celebrity game is just absolutely the last place you would expect someone to get. All I'm saying is all of Bangladesh cricket is currently very fraught. Fraught is the word I'm using.
Yeah, and I would love to check out the Bangladesh celebrity scene as well. Those movies must be very action-packed for sure. And yeah, I think that should be enough on the whole Tamim fiasco. Let's move towards the warm-ups, right? Now, coming from a Pakistan perspective, Pakistan lost to New Zealand, whatever, and I saw everyone bashing the team left, right, and center on Twitter, and I was like, why do we, and when I say we, I speak of the cricket community, and particularly in the subcontinent, always make such a big deal out of warm-ups before tournaments. I mean, all the teams are playing 15 players, everyone's bowling, everyone's batting. They're in that mindset to just get acclimatized with the conditions, and they don't particularly care about these games, right? So is there even anything worth reading into when it comes to warm-ups before ICC events?
No. I mean, for individual form, it could be quite handy. But what if you were in form over the last 10 games and the warm-up's the last time you are in form, and then a technical issue comes in, or you lose your confidence, or you face a bowler who messes with your brain?
In 2007, Pakistan defeated that South African team, the really good one, in a warm-up, lost to Ireland in the group stages, got knocked out. So, I mean, I don't know what to make of these things. I never pay any heed to warm-ups.
No, I can't remember if I mentioned this recently. We played 2 warm-ups with Scotland before the World Cup qualifiers in 2018 when I was with the team. And we lost to UAE. In part, we lost to UAE because we turned up to the game and half of their players we'd never seen before, because that was when their squad all disappeared. So we didn't actually know who we were playing against. It was like, who's this guy?
Is this when the Scottish players got dehydrated? Is this that story?
No, that was later on. But so we lost the game against UAE. I think Mustafa might have made some runs in that game. I can't remember anyway. And then I reckon we lost off the last ball against Ireland in the next warm up, and we lost our first game against Singapore, right? And I think there was a feeling that we had probably played the warm-up games a little bit too much like warm-up games, right? But I don't remember anyone in the camp go, we lost the game against Singapore because we didn't take that warm-ups seriously, or that we lost the warm-up. And if you think about it, like I said, the Ireland game was a cracky game. It was, but I think both teams made over 200. It came down to the last ball, if I remember correctly. It was such an exciting game. Ireland absolutely blitzed, right? And Scotland had a really slow start to the tournament. The warm-ups sort of had nothing to do with that. And I think individual forms are a little bit different. Is this person in their technique at the moment? Are they feeling the conditions? Are that, all those sorts of things are very, very valid things that, to ask. But it's not a real tournament. It's not how your team's going to line up. It's impossible for a player, unless they're playing for their spot on the side, it's impossible for a player to take this as seriously as they are going to be the first game of the World Cup. It is not how humans work.
Absolutely. I mean, especially with so much cricket coming up, you'd even be a bit conservative with respect to, over bowling your bowlers and stuff like that. And you see a lot of batters, they just get, they retire after getting to 50 because they don't want to overwork themselves either. Everyone's trying to get a feel of the conditions and stuff like that. So I think nothing really much to talk about. I'm not even going to talk about the other warm-ups, but I am going to talk about some other things. And I think Shaurya Pathak brought this up as well, that we've seen some rain. And it seems like those monsoon rains are coming in late. And all of a sudden, weather is impacting the World Cup. We've seen this happen before with the Asia Cup. And I don't know. I'm not from India. I don't know if this is a rainy sort of period in India. But I mean, it's been very evident that we might have a few washed out games, at least in the first leg of the tournament.
Do you know what? I looked this up the other day. I think the 2019 tournament had the most washed out games. And if you go back traditionally, we had 2 days for almost all games. So there's a lot of games at the old World Cup. I've been doing this huge deep dive for Double Century. And it shocked me how long they kept the two-day game. So 1999, they still had backup days for games. I'm not sure if they had them for all, but they certainly had them for a lot. 2003, I don't think they did. I think by 2003, Duckworth-Lewis had taken over. And so we're getting more washouts now. And so we do actually have to be, if you're not going to have reserve days, you do have to be more careful. Look, it will play its part. I'd be shocked if it's a huge deciding thing. But you come from a country that have won one 50-over World Cup, and they did it because of rain in Adelaide, right? So, and Adelaide's not a particularly rainy area. Like, was it February was that played, or March? Like,
March.
I wouldn't have thought that's a rainy period for Adelaide, right? I mean, Adelaide's just not a rainy place. So
Pakistan got 73, 77 all out, something along those lines.
It wasn't many. Game? It was less than 100. You're right. It was less than 100, and England were actually struggling in the chase, and then they lost some of the overs. It was going to be a tricky chase, but they probably would have got it just because they were chasing almost no runs. We have seen that before. There was also, if South Africa had beaten Australia in the Super Sixes in 1999, Zimbabwe would have gone through because of a washout they had with New Zealand. So, we've had major moments in World Cups, either almost affected by rain or affected by rain. I think there were some, weird rain games. Obviously, South Africa's whole tournament in 1992, although, spoiler alert, they cost themselves a lot of that problem by intentionally not bowling their overs. So they were being dodgy as hell. And also they decided to bowl first when they knew that the rain might actually cause them problems. But that's a separate thing. The point is that rain has played a big part before. It would be a shame if it happens again. But, we play an outdoor sport and sometimes it rains. And, it looks like now the ICC are almost dedicated to just playing as many events as possible in October. And owning that month of October. Some places, we had the World Cup in Australia. Hobart in October, not exactly where you want to play cricket, right? Geelong, again, even Melbourne in general, not exactly where you want to play cricket. The weather is going to play a part.
Yeah, and even in the last World Cup in England, like you mentioned, there were so many washouts, and it did, even if you look at Pakistan, we said that in 92 it helped them. Well, their game versus Sri Lanka got washed out in 2019, which they could have won and made the semifinals. But I mean, Indian fans will tell you that they played New Zealand on that second day of the semifinal, and rain played a part over there as well. Yeah. So there are lots of those stories, and I'm going to bet my money that we might have a few of those stories again, because someone like Raj Rohit in the comments has said that June to October is monsoon season in India. So we better watch out for that. One more observation, and we've been talking about this for a while. From the warm-ups, we've kind of had it confirmed. Flatter decks, flatter ICC tournament decks. And yeah, I mean, we're seeing some absolute belters. And do you think that the average scores in this World Cup would be in that 300 to 350 bracket? Or will the tournament pressure kick in? Because that's another thing, right?
Yeah, I think we're all waiting for that one really big scoring World Cup. And it didn't quite happen in 2015 the way that perhaps we thought it would. 2019, the wickets were actually far more friendly towards bowlers than we originally assumed they would be, certainly compared to how England have been playing their one-day game. This is the next tournament, right, where you kind of expect that to happen, and I can see why that would be the case. But tournament play is different, and I think that you don't have the same kind of freedom in tournament play. The one thing I would say that is in the favor of us having a high-scoring World Cup is it is a round robin pretty much for your first 6 or 7 games, right? After that, if you're not doing too well, it becomes a bit of a knockout. But I do think there's a little bit more freedom there than maybe we've seen, in some other World Cup formats, from that perspective. So maybe that plays a part.
Yeah, lots of people in the comments are mentioning how South Africa have been undone by rain a fair few times. Of course, we all remember 2003 and then 92, of course, we've talked about.
But they were, there is a bit of revisionist history here. They weren't undone by rain in 1992, right? They caused themselves their own problems. They were massively behind the rate. At best, they would have needed 22 off 13 balls with, 3 wickets in hand, right? They were massively behind in that game, right? We can't even put a Duckworth-Lewis calculation on that game, Bayram, because they didn't bowl their 50 overs because they were essentially fudging the game to begin with, right?
True.
That so many things they did. 2003, they were given a piece of paper. Mark Boucher could have easily made a single off that last ball. Murley was bowling with a wet sponge at that point. It would have been very easy to turn his hands. They made a mistake. South Africa have not been done over by the rain rules. They've done themselves over. And that's a really important thing to remember. Like, there are things that have gone against them. And that 92 game, I think 92 broke people's hearts because it was the comeback kids and everything else. But when you start to scratch at the surface, it's very hard for you to go, oh, they brought this on themselves.
Yeah. Another thing that I can't forget from that 2003 World Cup game is Kumar Sangakkara sledging. If you haven't checked that out, go to YouTube, check it out. And
after the show.
Yeah, after the show, of course. But what was the line? The weight of all these expectations, something like that.
50 million people or something like that. Wasn't that the line?
It was hilarious. And someone has also said that Behram has finally found his old lost comb. Well, this is my comb. You can take a good look at it. Okay, this is the only comb I have. Anyway, we'll take another break and we'll be back.
I wonder what you meant then, and I just realized you were saying you comb your hair with your hand, which is fine, perfectly acceptable. I don't own a comb either.
Absolutely, absolutely. I feel weird using a comb because it gets too flat. Then I like my hair poofy.
But if we got a sponsor for combs, we would both use combs. So if you're a comb manufacturer out there and you want to get involved, you can.
Yeah, we've got.
I know that you think you could run your favorite cricket team better than those who do. But no one is going to let you do that. So why not try Wicket Cricket Manager to satisfy that urge? Pick your nation, pick your league, pick your players, and yell at them when they do poorly. You can find it in the links below or by searching for Wicket Cricket Manager in your app store today. Step into the World of Cricket podcast with me at the Jared Kimber Podcast Network. Be part of our live recordings or listen to insightful conversations 4 times a week. Wagon Wheel, Uncovered, Footmarks, and Red Inker. These shows cover kind of everything across the game. If you like what we do on this channel, you're probably going to enjoy the podcast we do as well. Support us on Patreon and help us keep making our content. Join for exclusive perks like the AMAs, the live calls, and to chat with me directly on Discord. You can also enjoy ad-free content, early podcasts, and access to my emailer. Step up your cricket style game with Bodyline t-shirts. Explore their exclusive player-themed t-shirts, including favorites like Virat Kohli, Kane Williamson, and Ben Stokes. They also have team-inspired designs and options for hardcore cricket nerds. Their collection offers something unique for every fan.
Welcome back to the Uncovered podcast. This is Behram Qazi. You can find me at DefMango on Twitter, and with me is Jared Kimber. Some more comments, of course, on South Africa. They apparently lost on DLS today as well, so the irony really is not lost. And yeah, we're going to go towards Hayley Matthews now. And I see Hypocost in the comments. Shout out to Hypocost. I actually looked up on a lot of tweets that he had posted just to educate myself further. And Jared, it's quite an amazing story, right? She smashed an unbeaten 99 in the previous T20, the first T20I versus the Southern Stars, in a losing cause, but then came back in the second T20I. Took 3 wickets before, and then scored a 64-ball 132, which might just be the most complete performance by a female cricketer that we've seen in T20 cricket. Or do you have another one in mind?
I mean, I can't think of any. Hypercost will come up with 7 options. But look, it was ridiculous. I reckon it was a couple of years. So 2016, when she made that innings against Australia that kind of changed her life and, set up her career. I remember a couple of years later talking to a couple of women's coaches, and they said that innings might have been the worst thing that happened to her, because she was not a top order batter, and she didn't have all the skills that were required to be a top order batter at that time. And after that, how could you not look at her as a top batting talent? And so it's taken its time to fully come through and for her to develop into this. She's a fantastic player, and her overall record maybe doesn't always show how talented she is. But I think she's a fantastic player. But to do this against Australia, in Australia, is just a remarkable effort. It might have been
for the record. This is something else that I learned from Hypocost's tweets, that West Indies have now beaten Australia in any format for the very first time, and have just become the 4th country to do this in women's cricket, right? Which is phenomenal. And I mean, the Southern Stars, we all know how powerful they are, how belligerent and dominant they've been. They're the T20 World Cup champions, right? And to defeat them, chasing 200 plus in a T20 game, I mean, huge. I'm lost for words. It's crazy.
And the interesting thing for me is how many runs Hayley Matthews scored over cover or through cover or around cover.
Shout out to Cheyenne.
Yeah,
the cover region.
Was it 66 over runs? I mean,
66 runs in the cover region.
Absolutely. I mean, it reminds me of Harmanpreet when she made her runs against Australia. She hit everything over mid-wicket. It's, their talent that is needed to be able to pull the same shot off over and over again. And I do think that women are actually better at cover driving, partly because that quite often when they're younger, they are much more technically correct. But even so, to be able to do this at that level so consistently, I think is remarkable. But look, it's a weird time to do something really, really good in cricket, especially in women's cricket, because the Men's World Cup's about to start. But it felt like because there were all these warm-up games that people were sort of half interested in, it kind of exploded to a certain point. But for West Indies women's cricket, we don't know where their stars are going to be. Hayley Matthews is obviously still there. I've watched a little bit of women's CPL. There's some good players coming through. I'm not sure there's any great players coming through. Maybe in the next generation, but maybe not in that 23 to 25-year-old point. They need everything they could get, beating Australia. But the other question here is, does this just mean that Australia is no longer, have teams started to catch up with them or work them out?
I mean, in the women's Ashes, we saw that, right? England gave them a very, very tough time. And if you take that test match out, you'd say England were the better team.
Well, you've got that. You've then got the fact that England struggled against Sri Lanka, women. And now you've got the West Indians going over to Australia. I'm not saying that Australia is no longer the best team in the world, but it's an interesting thing to keep an eye on, I would have thought.
Yeah. And it's so interesting to see that, we spoke about Sri Lanka, how Chamari Atapattu, she rose to the occasion. And even though it was not a full strength English side, but they defeated England in a T20I series in England. Pakistan whitewashed South Africa 3-0 at home. And now we're seeing West Indies defeat Australia, the mighty Southern Stars, in their own backyard. This is all just amazing for women's cricket, because we've seen that it's been a bit skewed with respect to competition over the course of its short history. But, not short history, but relative short history.
Short modern history, yeah.
Yeah, short modern history. But now we're seeing that gulf is being, lessened. And I think that's the best news possible.
No, I mean, I think I'm different than most people in that I don't think that one team dominating is as bad news as everyone else thinks it is, But at the same time, for the Olympics and for those sorts of things, it is important that we have. I remember when cricket went to the Olympics the first time, they essentially said, the IOC, you only have 4 women's teams who can play. We can't let you in if this is all you have. we're up to 8 or 9, right?
Yeah.
And we don't need these teams. No one's expecting the West Indies to beat Australia
if you
50.
count Thailand and Papua New Guinea and those sort of teams, which on their day can do pretty well. I mean,
I think
a lot of countries, they're investing in their women's team more. You told me about Brazil, right? Because they see that their women's team has a better chance of winning than their men's team. And I think there's a market out there.
No, definitely. And so I think that you get to 8 or 9 teams that have a realistic chance. If the 9th team has a realistic chance of beating the 3rd ranked team, right? So let's say 40% chance. You're moving towards a really, really strong ecosystem. And I do think that the thing is that, I was talking to some people in USA cricket recently, and I was like, why are you even worried about the men? We know that soccer/football, over there, really grew as much through women as it did through men. They can make a huge difference, right? I know that Chinese officials have been told the same sorts of things, right? I said before, if I was running Pakistan or Bangladesh, I'd be putting so much money into women's cricket just for the exact same reason. So yeah, I do think that there is a chance of, to be able to do all that sort of stuff. So look, it will be just the last couple of weeks, months, whatever they've been, I think are really, really promising. I don't think it means Australia is no longer the best team in the world. And I don't know if that matters, whether they're the dominant team or not. But you do need more teams who have an ability to occasionally rise up. And it looks like that's where women's cricket is right at the moment.
Yeah, you mentioned how it's not the worst thing when there's one team that's dominating a sport. Says the guy who went to the 2003 World Cup final, Jared. Of course, you won't mind that, right? But one final thought.
I don't know. Honestly, if it was up to me, Victoria would win every game, and they would play as the independent nation that they should be. And I think that'd be great.
And Mick Lewis would have been your, stellar, I don't know, legend for Victoria, the guy who won you the World Cup.
Exactly.
Yeah. One final thought on this discourse with respect to women's cricket. I think it's a very, very valid question to ask. We've seen a plethora of franchise leagues emerge within the women's circuit. And now we're seeing all of this competition getting better between different sides and, lesser endowed boards and better boards and the likes. So do you think that it has a big role to play, the franchise cricket model that's kind of taking over women's cricket? Because we've spoken about this before. They're paying them more, and we might see a lot of, women opt out of international cricket. We've already seen a lot of them. So that's another factor to, I guess, discuss.
I actually wonder if women's international cricket will die before men's. And I don't mean die completely, because I do think both of them will go on. There will be World Cups at the very least, and probably Olympics. And, in the women's case, maybe it will continue with Commonwealth Games. But I do wonder if that's what we see, that the majority of the bilateral women's cricket no longer exists. That would mean it would largely be a T20 sport, I think, women's cricket, which is would be frustrating for, I think, some of us as cricket fans. But as long as that allowed for so many women to play. But yes, through the Fair Play tournament, through any of these new leagues, the ability to have women paid to be professional cricketers, the boards, I just did a podcast with Raf Nicholson about, fair play between men and women. We're a long way off that, right? It's funny when they go, we're giving you equal pay, and by equal pay we mean match fees, not actual contracts where you make the majority of your money. And so,
who would be the most endorsed female cricketer? Elise Perry, probably, who'd get the most advertisements and stuff. I'm curious to know how much she makes.
In the old days, she was very good. I don't know if she's even kind of like that anymore. But yes, she was very popular. Sort of peak Elise Perry. She was the player that everyone in Australia knew, right? Like, even if you didn't know anything about women's cricket. So I certainly think that, these new leagues out there actually allows for more women to become professional, which will ultimately help the overall growth of the game. But because that's coming along so early in the women's development, I do actually think that, the bilateral side of women's cricket might completely die up. But maybe you get a women's Champions Trophy, women's T20 World Cup, 50 over World Cup probably will disappear. So you'll have 2 T20s, maybe a Champions Trophy, and then a senior edition. And then you'll have the Olympics and the Commonwealth Games. Gives you 4 events, one every year of women's cricket. And then you have the women's IPL and whatever other leagues do well.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I'd be super keen to see how that unfolds. And yeah, I think that'll be all for today's episode of The Uncovered. Of course, if any of those leagues, people who organize those leagues or pay for them are watching, sign Hayley Matthews. She might come in handy, definitely. And yeah, once again, if any comb sponsors are out there, we'll use them on the show if you just sponsor us. But anyway, thanks to everyone who
Love
turned up in the
sports. I want to
comments.
write.
Sorry,
We've
I've done that
this.
to you twice today.
Yeah, now twice. But just wanted to thank everybody. And this is a new channel. We have just over 1,000 subs. So thank you for all your support. Tell your friends to subscribe as well. This is where you will be able to catch The Uncovered. And we'll be back again next week as well with episode 53. But and the World Cup will have begun. So that'll be a good one. Don't miss out on that. And yeah, thanks once again. And we'll catch you next time. For now, that's all. Goodbye.
Love sports and want to write or podcast on it? Look no further than Fans with Laptops. It's a specialized course tailored for aspiring sports enthusiasts like you. Uncover the secrets of the press box, learn how to create compelling stories from scratch, and discover the best methods to share your content online. Support us on Patreon. Join for exclusive perks like AMAs, live calls with me, and a vibrant Discord community. Enjoy ad-free content, early podcast episodes, and access to my emailer, plus behind-the-scenes stuff. We've built our channel on Patreon support, so a huge thanks to everyone who has helped.